Welcome to National Parks Traveler, where we explore the national parks and the issues that involve them.
It's been said time and again that the National Park Service is not adequately funded. There's just not enough money in the agency's annual budgets to address all the needs across the national park system. And those needs are many indeed, from maintaining facilities, keeping wastewater treatment plants operating smoothly, managing wildlife, and tending to the ever-growing throngs of visitors. That's where friends groups and cooperating associations come into play. They provide much-needed financial support through philanthropic donations that might pay for wildlife research, trail maintenance, or campground upkeep. Friends of Acadia is one such group, and its workload has grown through the years. While friends groups once were seen as raising charitable dollars to fund the so-called margin of excellence in the parks, today the Park Service is relying more and more on these nonprofit organizations to fund projects addressing the muscle and bones of park operations, as I like to say. Today we're going to discuss this evolution with Eric Stiles, who recently took the helm at Friends of Acadia following David MacDonald's departure. In a minute, we'll be back with Eric.
Acadia National Park is one of the 10 most popular national parks in the United States. It is also one of the smallest and most vulnerable. That is why Friends of Acadia exists. Friends of Acadia is an independent organization of passionate people, inspiring those who love this magnificent park to make a real and lasting difference for Acadia. You can make a difference at friendsofacadia.org. Wild Tribute is lifestyle apparel founded for our parks and public lands. We donate 4% of our proceeds to support America's most wild and historic places. This is our Wild Tribute. Together, we can and will make a difference for the parks. You can learn more at wildtribute.com. Whether it be strategy, business planning, change management, board development, executive search, or diversity planning, Potrero Group is here to help. They mix a depth of experience in the parks and land space with the breadth of best practices from other industries. For more information or to schedule a preliminary conversation, go to potrerogroup.com. Potrero group.com. The beauty of lifelong membership with Interior Federal Credit Union is that we are here for you forever to handle any financial needs that life throws your way. Car loans, home repairs, investment accounts, trust accounts for the family. 99% of our members never visit a branch because of our 4.8 star rated mobile app. Make sure you share the gift of membership with your family. Start kids and grandkids with a Little Buffalo account at interiorfcu.org. Federally insured by NCUA.
Welcome to The Traveler, Eric. It's great to have you on for this virtual introduction and conversation.
Kurt, it is truly an honor and a pleasure, and thanks for everything that you do to elevate the voice of National Park throughout the country.
It's a passion, that's for sure, but it's a lot of fun along the way, no doubt. Now, you came to Friends of Acadia from New Jersey, and having grown up in New Jersey, maybe I can understand why you left, but what intrigued you about this job, and why did you head north to Maine?
Kurt, great question. So I wasn't running away from New Jersey and New Jersey Audubon, loved it there, but I was running to Friends of Acadia and Acadia National Park. The first time I remember coming here, I did come here as I think I was 10 months old, my father said. So he said that, no, he introduced me to Acadia, but I don't have many memories of that. My wife and I, Lydia, came here in 1993, and it was our first vacation as a kind of young couple, and we spent 2 weeks in Maine, and we intended to come to Acadia for 3 days, and we spent 10, and just fell in love with the amazing land, the culture, the intersectionality of the mountains and the sea, all the things that makes Acadia so magical. And we've been back about a dozen times with our kids. Our daughter's now 21, our son's 18. And one of my favorite pictures is I'm holding our daughter in a backpack out at Seawall as we're exploring kind of the intertidal zone. And that's at home. I have a similar picture of our son, and we were on Sargent Mountain when he was a little one. So it stuck with us, and I've had amazing mentors in my life that have opened doors for me. Like many folks, especially in this market, you get calls from headhunters, and typically I try to pay it forward. So I say, well, oh, this person could be a great fit. Well, when I got a call from the search firm and they said they're looking for a new CEO of Friends of Acadia, knowing the reputation of both David MacDonald and Friends of Acadia, it was the first one that I thought, boy, this could be amazing. And I'd been at New Jersey Audubon 21 years. Wasn't looking for a change, but it's almost serendipity. And I sat on it for a week. I was a little nervous. My wife is a very talented. She's won awards at a state level, county level, district. And I was nervous about saying, ooh, let's look at this life-changing opportunity. And I shared it with her, and there's this gleam in her eye, and she said, go for it. So we just have this shared love of the land, and we're so grateful to have this opportunity to give back to a place that has given so much to us.
It's kind of interesting, Eric. We're both from New Jersey. Acadia was both our first national parks. I think I was about 7 or 8 years old when we first went there. Drove up from New Jersey with my parents and my one brother, and it really stuck with me. I mean, people constantly ask me, gosh, what's your favorite national park, Kurt? And I inevitably answer, well, Yellowstone, just because it's so wonderful with the thermal features and the wildlife and the mountains and the forests and the lakes. But Acadia is, right there. I mean, don't tell any of the other park friends of mine, but it carries such incredible memories. I mean, you carried your son on a backpack. My father carried our poodle in his arm as we climbed up the rungs of one of those trails. I don't know why he brought the dog. Don't know how he got the dog in the park, but certainly the tide pools and whatnot. And Acadia really is an amazing place, as all national parks are. They all have their unique elements. Now, you mentioned that your wife has won all these awards. In what?
She's a middle school science teacher, so she's very much into especially getting the kids outdoors, outdoor gardening, outdoor learning. I say that trying to advance an outdoor classroom in New Jersey is like a salmon trying to swim up a waterfall. And in Maine, it's part of the cultural norm. So she just got a job working at the local high school here and is really excited teaching biology and environmental studies. So
wow, that's a great place.
Two peas in a pod, though she's a very different and much better person than I am. So,
well, don't know about that. I haven't met her yet, so I can't say. But Friends of Acadia has done so much trying to get teens into the park and engaging them in different facets of the national park system, or the national park operation there, largely in I believe both natural science and social science, right?
Yeah, and they've revamped. It's really exciting to meet the, ages 15 to 18, the Acadia Youth Corps, and get to hear from those young adults, kind of late teens, about their experience, what it meant for them. It was kind of like a graduation ceremony. You had grandparents, you had parents. And in the past, they might have really focused on something like the trails. And they revamped it to really say this is an opportunity to engage the emerging leaders in the full operational portfolio of the national parks. And you could just see the power as the young men, young women were sharing their own experiences, realizing there's a whole suite of potential career opportunities within both conservation and the national park system. Whether that's from working trails, the cultural, the historic, the natural resource, the interpretive space. There's a whole range of opportunities here. And one of the silver linings of COVID, and there aren't many, is that people are spending time outdoors at a record rate. Now, when I say the silver linings, we know that kids that grow up surrounded by green, significantly lower rates of depression and anxiety as adults. We know that kids that spend time outside, much higher performance level in school. There's higher attendance records, there's higher graduation records. We know that adults spend time outside, lower blood pressure, lower rates of diabetes, lower rates of asthma. And you could say, well, why are you talking about this? Because it's one of the challenges is because people have been getting outside at record numbers, visitation to our amazing national parks has spiked. And so that becomes a kind of double-edged sword. On the one hand, we are committed We are saying that this is the nation's park. It is the premier system for the United States, and the people of the United States deserve nothing less. But what happens when you start putting 5 gallons of water into a gallon bucket, right? It gets a little messy. And so
there.
and so that's one of the challenges that our great parks are facing throughout the United States, which is how do we maintain a high quality experience without harming these incredible places?
No, it is an incredible challenge, and I know Kevin Snyder and his team there at the park has worked with the Friends of Acadia to try and solve some of these issues, and the reservation system, if you want to call that, to drive to the top of Cadillac Mountain is one aspect of trying to address the crowds, and it's one of many being tried across the national park system. And how's it working?
Kurt, you're bringing a smile on my face, because at first I was a little skeptical, I have to say, when I heard about the reservation system, because going up there for sunrise, I'm not a morning guy, but the only thing that's going to get me up at that time of the day was sunrise at Cadillac Mountain. But my wife made a reservation for us to go for a walk up there and kind of a picnic at dusk. It was the quality of the experience, now that the reservation system is in place, is so much higher. It's so much higher. If you've ever been on a crowded subway in DC or New York City or those urban areas, it's not a high quality experience. You're sitting cheek to jowl, and Cadillac was at risk of, that experience was definitely being impeded, not from anyone's individual's poor behavior. You just had too many sardines for one can, right? Yeah. And so the quality of the experience I can share, just went there last Sunday. I can share because of the reservation system, the quality of that experience is much higher. But even more important than kind of one person's anecdote is the surveys that are being done of visitors support that as well, that people are reporting a higher quality of experience. There's also opportunity costs, right? So if your rangers and law enforcement are up there to deal with kind of double and triple parking, well, that pulls them from other important things like search and rescue. So it has improved the visitor experience. It's also allowed for the National Park Service staff that were up there dealing with New York City or Philadelphia traffic conditions, and getting them out into the park to do more important work.
Challenges. We're talking today with Eric Stiles, the head of Friends of Acadia, the philanthropic partner of Acadia National Park. We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back.
The Blue Ridge Parkway Foundation is the primary nonprofit fundraising partner for the Blue Ridge Parkway. It is made up of people who have a deep love for this majestic road and want to ensure that its natural beauty and the experiences it offers endure for generations to come. Show your appreciation at brpfoundation.org. Washington State is graced with 3 spectacular national parks, each different and special in their own unique ways. As the official nonprofit partner and the only philanthropic organization dedicated exclusively to supporting these parks through charitable contributions, Washington's National Park Fund has a mission to raise private support to deepen everyone's love for, understanding of, and experiences in Mount Rainier, North Cascades, and Olympic National Parks. Share your passion for these parks at wnpf.org. The Everglades Foundation, the only organization whose sole mission is to restore and protect America's Everglades. Learn more at evergladesfoundation.org. The Yosemite Conservancy helps visitors connect with Yosemite through adventures, volunteering, and the arts. It's the only nonprofit dedicated to supporting Yosemite National Park and funds grants to improve trails, restore habitat, protect wildlife, and inspire the next generation of nature lovers. Learn more at yosemite.org.
Eric, talking about national park experiences and how the reservation system at Cadillac has improved the quality of the experience. One thing that, I've talked about from time to time with other guests in weeks and months gone by is how do we define the national park experience? I'm long in tooth. I'm in my 7th decade. I hate to say that. I can't believe it. I don't feel like it. But point being, the experience that I grew up with in the 1960s and 1970s going to national parks when we didn't have the type of visitation we see today is much different than what we are seeing today with the crowds in Yellowstone and Yosemite and, Acadia. So what to me could be, I wouldn't say a miserable, but a less than ideal national park experience to somebody who grew up in the aughts that we're in now, it might just be another day in the park, so to speak, and they get used to that. I don't know how you define the national park experience and how you aim to make it the best experience.
There's a lot to unpack there. I mean, what is it to be the nation's park? I think you'd start by saying that the experience should be welcoming and inclusive, right? And there are some folks that don't feel, I think the National Park Service is making efforts in this space of diversity and inclusion. In other words, we're saying that this is the premier park for our nation and should serve the nation. And what that looks like from my family might be different than another family. So I think unpacking this is recognizing that not all folks experience things in the same way and have the same welcoming feeling. And I think there's a lot that can be done and is being done to do so. But to get to your point about kind of the crowding, it was interesting. Everyone said, don't go into the park on the 4th of July weekend, right? So, I mean, there's all sorts of places you could go, Cadillac, Sand Beach, that you would have been cheek to jowl. But I just went 2 miles to the west, talked to David MacDonald, and I said, where would you hike? And he said Cedar Swamp Mountain, which is the same that a board member, Ann Green, told me. It's just 2 miles to the west of Cadillac Mountain. I hiked 6.5 miles, gorgeous trails, great vistas, good sights. I only saw 2 other parties over 2.5 hours.
Wow.
So I think some of this is really helping people understand that it is both a numbers problem, but it's a distribution problem.
Right.
So every time I've gone to Yellowstone, unless I'm at, Old Faithful, if I get more than half a mile from the trailhead, you got it to yourself. So I think part of this is, as people come to visit, is helping them have the kind of the tools to understand that there are amazing opportunities. I mean, there's these iconic places, Thunder Hole, but you can go to a place like Seawall and walk along the seashore, Bass Harbor Lighthouse, or these other places at Acadia, which are also featured at other national parks. So instead of being a moth, seeking that light, and we're all like heading in the same place, is how do we help create opportunities to educate and engage people and let them know about other wonderful places that are analogs, that you're not really shoulder to shoulder, your stress level's high because you can't find parking and that kind of stuff. So I think there's a variety of ways that you can do that, one of which is listening to great podcasts like this and being armed and informed. Another, there's some really good apps that are available for various national parks to help give you that sense of other opportunities. And then there's things like mass transit. One of the things that I'm really proud of, Friends of Acadia, working with amazing partners like the National Park here, Acadia National Park, but also the towns are financially contributing. It's called Island Explorers. And the idea is, how do we get fewer cars on the road? And the mass transit system here is free. What's interesting, I just heard this for the second time. When they initially piloted it, the fare was $2 for riding on the bus. They removed that fare and ridership went up 600%.
Wow.
600%. So that's 6 times the number of cars that you remove from the road.
Yeah.
Right. So really leaning into the space and saying there is not a single solution, but there's whether it's reservations, whether it's busing systems, educating and engaging visitors about amazing places that they can go that may be a higher quality experience for them because it's less crowded. And you're basically getting, in fact, I would say you're going to leave with a net positive over someone that is stressed to the nines, trying to find parking on a weekend to see Thunder Hole. And now Thunder Hole is amazing. I'm not saying don't go to Thunder Hole, but what I am saying is, instead of just thinking of, I need to see Old Faithful, I need to see Half Dome, I need to see Thunder Hole, there are other things out there that folks can get out and enjoy.
No, absolutely. And it boils down to we just have to be more strategic with our park visits. Whether you go out early in the day, go out early or later in the afternoon. My wife and I were just at Cape Breton Highlands National Park in Nova Scotia. And one of the must-do activities is hiking the Skyview Trail. And I guess we got there at 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, along with, 400 or 500 of our best friends. And they had a parking attendant there, and, he kind of looked at us, and we looked at him. And basically, I asked him, would it be better to come back in the afternoon, later in the afternoon? He goes, yeah, you'll really have a much better experience if you come back after 4 o'clock. And they've got this huge parking lot there, and it must be almost a quarter or a half mile long, and there's spaces on both sides. And so we left, and we hiked 3 other trails in the park. Didn't run into a soul on any of them. They were really interesting trails. I'm writing up a story on them. You can read it on The Traveler in the coming weeks. We went back a little 4:30, and yes, there was less traffic there, but there were still a lot of people out there in the trails. So, you have to make those strategic choices going forward. And we've really digressed from talking about the Friends of Acadia and just talking about national park experiences overall. But you talk about crowding and whatnot, and there's something going on there in Bar Harbor with the cruise ships. And can you update us on that? Didn't the town council just take a vote or something on how many cruise ships they want to see coming into port every day?
Yeah, and look, as someone that recently, well, I guess 4 years ago, went to Venice, someone who's been to Key West, I can appreciate how cruise ships can really have a tremendous impact, unintended impact on the quality of life. So there was 2 efforts underway. One is the town of Bar Harbor said, hey, let's sit down with the industry and figure out a solution, because it is an important, revenue base for some of the local places, but you don't want to throttle the golden goose.
Sure.
And that is what can happen. God, if you've been to Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and folks may
Gatlinburg.
Thank you, Gatlinburg.
And Pigeon Forge.
Yep. I mean, I'll be candid. Like, I love Great Smokies, but that scares the heck out of me. Like, the fact that I had to drive through that to get to the national park was not a pleasant experience. Now, others may disagree, right? But I think it is fair to say, what is the quality of experience? What is the quality of community? What's the quality of economy? And to your point, it needs to be strategic and thoughtful. And it's not going to be the same answer where you are. So here in Bar Harbor, the town council, I think, that has done a very good job to say it's a legitimate issue. There's multiple interest here. The joke is a good compromise is when no one's happy. And they sat down with the industry, and they sat down with the Chamber of Commerce and residents, and came up with a framework that was just approved that really seems to be a good kind of practical solution. There is also a citizens petition that would be much more draconian in limiting the cruise line industry. But that will be up for the voters here to decide. And look, I say, look, democracy is a participatory sport, and it only works if people show up. And one of the things I'm really proud of is the community, both the residents and the town council, have really rolled up their sleeves and are working on this. And to your point, is it the perfect solution? Well, no one knows, but part of it is putting things in place and then assessing it. Is this working? And then being open to modifying that. And I feel that I'm very proud of my new home community, Bar Harbor here. Work in Bar Harbor, live in Bar Harbor. The approach they're taking really resonates with me as a resident and as a team member at Friends of Acadia.
All right. We're talking today with Eric Stiles, the new president and CEO of Friends of Acadia. We're going to take a short break, and we'll talk about Friends of Acadia when we get back.
Since 1986, national park visitors have turned to the best-selling guidebook Passport to Your National Parks to collect fun ink stamps from each of their explorations. Just take your Passport book to any National Park Visitor Center or park store and get your free ink stamp with the date and location of your visit. Personalize your Passport even more by adding stickers, logging your favorite hiking trails, and mapping your next adventure. You can also show off your love for our national parks with Passport-themed apparel and accessories. Best of all, 100% of proceeds from the Passport program support your national parks. Stamp your passport as you capture stories, preserve memories, and discover America's natural and historical treasures. Full of stunning photography and thought-provoking reads, Smoky's Life is a biannual magazine produced by Great Smoky Mountains Association. Members receive it free of charge each spring and fall, and it is available for purchase in retail stores throughout Great Smoky Mountains National Park and online at smokiesinformation.org. The Grand Teton National Park Foundation is a private, nonprofit organization that supports projects that protect and enhance Grand Teton National Park's cultural, historic, and natural resources. By funding initiatives that go beyond what the National Park Service could accomplish on its own, Foundation donors improve the visitor experience and provide benefits to the National Park System for decades to come. See their successes at gtnpf.org.
Kurt, one of the things that you touched on was the quality of the visitor experience. And there's a lot of academics that have done work in this space, but I'm going to credit the one that taught me it in my career about 20 years ago. His name was Julian Hagemann. He was a professor, still is a professor at Tufts University, that has shown that if people see folks, they self-identify, someone that looks like them, as what is perceived as staff. It could be a volunteer, it could be staff. The person that's greeting you at the parking lot looks like you feel more welcome, you feel more included. So there's a whole push right now at U.S. Department of Interior. It's called Diversity Joint Venture. And the premise, joint ventures was the successful model for recovery of waterfowl in North America. We focus on flyways. So the Atlantic Flyway, the Mississippi Flyway, the idea is you bring all the parties together that share that common interest, which was duck conservation. So U.S. Department of Interior has said, hey, we have a common interest here, and the common interest is diversifying the workforce. First of all, it's simply the right thing to do. Second, it's the strategic thing to do by way of, if you have a more diversified workforce, then the public responds better because they see themselves in the professionals there. Third, it brings more talent to the table. Right now, conservation is overwhelmingly Caucasian. Well, as Boris Johnson said, talent is equally distributed, but opportunity isn't. And so if we're leaving talent on the sidelines, then that's harming our national parks. So again, recognizing that, diversity inclusion, if we're saying that, what is the national park? What's the national park experience? For whom or with whom do we work and partner and serve? That diversifying the workforce is an important portion of, I think, the future of the National Park Service, as well as friends groups. So I'd say that we're on the cusp of that journey. It's an exciting journey, and it's going to yield incredible dividends. We're going to have more talent. Visitor experience is going to go up. There's nothing wrong with people that look like you and me, Kurt. But what we're saying is we need to diversify that portfolio.
Well, no, and there's a lot of things that go into that. I mean, you can talk about it and you can present opportunities, but the pay has to be there, the salaries, the quality of life. Year after year after year, I've been running the Traveler for going on 18 years now, and the best places to work in federal government surveys that come out every year continues to show the Park Service lagging far behind. And I know Chuck Sams, the new director of the Park Service, that's one of his goals, is to really raise the workplace experience for the Park Service employees. And I hope he figures out how to do that, because it's been something that's been talked about for years. Not an easy task.
No, but boy, is it worth undertaking, right? I mean, anything that's easy really isn't the impact you're looking for. So I think there's good trouble to be made. Here in Maine, we're very fortunate to have the strong support of our entire delegation for Acadia National Park. But let's get to scale, right? So a mentor once said, a vision with no funding is a hallucination. And if we're saying that we want to be one of the world's premier national park systems, to your point, philanthropy cannot replace the investment from tax revenue. That is, we should be looking to create additional opportunities for that margin of excellence, right? The nonprofit, what you can do is you can innovate a lot more rapidly than government. So it allows us to pilot things. It allows us to bring things perhaps to scale sooner or faster. But when we talk to our donors, we're talking about leveraging federal dollars, not replacing them. So, I think
Sure.
Congress needs, and this president need to do a better job funding our national parks.
Yeah.
Full stop. It is as simple as that. It really is. I think the Great American Outdoors Act was a step in that direction, but it's going to sunset. Is it the solution? No, but is it an indicator that there is strong bipartisan support from Louisiana to Maine, from New York to California? I don't know any congressional member that is opposed to our National Park Service system. So I think we need to do a better job as a community educating and engaging folks to make sure that we are really resourcing the agency, which is one element, right? So
Yeah.
the second is kind of that culture. And I think that the men and women I've chatted with within the National Park Service are among the most passionate, dedicated government employees I've ever met. My hat's off to them. They inspire me every waking moment. And we just need to do a better job supporting them. They deserve nothing less.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And hopefully Congress will renew the Great American Outdoors Act when it comes up in the next couple of years. But let's try and go back to the beginning and Friends of Acadia and your arrival there. Did you, after you got your dream job, develop a list of priorities that you wanted to tackle?
Good point. My own view is that if an organization changes its priorities with a CEO, it doesn't have an organization, it has a cult of personality. So Friends of Acadia has an amazing vision for the future, developed with the community, developed with Acadia National Park. I'm very excited for those priorities. I think there's some growth opportunities for us as an organization, but I've seen too many organizations, nonprofits, they bring in a new CEO, they jettison their strategic plan, they get rid of the top staff, they bring in a whole new board, and it may as well be, there's no continuity.
Mm-hmm.
So if we think about, we are in this business for decades to come, right? It's not that we're looking to do something fun and flashy for a year or two. The types of conversations you and I are having are about how do we steward these in the face of climate change? How do you diversify your workforce? How do you better resource the men and women of the National Park Service? What is the role of philanthropy within this space? So to me, that's exciting, because an organization that's looking to pivot on a dime, and they asked me in the interview, what is my approach? What's my philosophy? And I think, Kurt, I was attracted to Friends of Acadia because of its amazing history, because of the amazing work, and because of the amazing vision. I am very excited to be part of that team now. So when I look at some of the growth opportunities moving forward, things like climate change, it clearly is front and center for all national parks. So it is issues from the infrastructure decisions to how do we have model projects. So for example, in stewarding, I always say that conservation, 99% of folks in conservation biology are trying to navigate towards the future by looking in the rearview mirror. You wouldn't drive on 95 by doing that, and it's no way to steward our natural resources. That is, the plants that are here today may not be the ones that are going to be here in 30 to 50 years. The same for animals. So that mind's eye to future and future conditions. And that's exciting space, because there was a leading conservation biologist, Hector Galbraith, that said, I must have looked pretty down and out by the end of the conference. And he said, look, you can either get depressed about the up to 2/3 of species we're going to lose, or get incredibly excited about the 2/3 that we can save. How do you want to look at it? Because if you're fate, if you say it's a fait accompli, that's going to lead to those outcomes. I think, additionally, as we start taking a look at these spaces to say, this is the national park, it's serving the nation, and it's starting to take a look at different cultural opportunities, like we're seeing with First Nations right now, right? So how do we, without harming the experience, broaden that experience and recognize that those different experiences are legitimate? It may be different than when I was 10 and my dad loaded us up into the Griswold family station wagon and we spent 3 months at national parks. unless the tent flooded out like it did in Grand Tetons. But that was how we experienced it. That may be different than other families, right? So the universal experience is a high quality experience, but that's the universality. Different families, different cultures are going to experience it in different ways. And how do we start pushing into that space, leaning in that space? Another one is huge, and it's hitting it's hitting the nation, which is affordable housing. Say, what the heck is Friends of Acadia doing with affordable housing? They're a partner organization, they're a conservation organization, a cultural organization. Right now, if you look, the trail system at Acadia I would argue, is the best in our national park inventory. And as kind of a data point for that, it is the only trail system in its entirety that's registered on the National Historic Registration. And that's thanks in large part to folks like the Rockefeller family that, created that infrastructure. Well, to maintain that, you need staff. So Acadia National Park had the approval to hire 40 folks. They could only hire 21, in large part because you can't afford to, if you're fresh out of college or maybe second chapter and you're getting paid as a seasonal, the cost is insurmountable. So to accept a job here, you either need to come from money where your parents can write that check to subsidize you, or be local. So think of the talent we're leaving on the sidelines. So now Friends of Acadia, working with Acadia National Park and other partners, have recognized that in order for us to really have the workforce that we need, the talent of the workforce and the numbers of people, we're going to need to build workforce housing. Now, your listener may be like, snooze time. But the thing is, unless the men and women of the National Park Service have places to live, if your ranger has to live an hour away and you have an emergency, who's going to be there to respond?
Yeah, no, it's a real challenge, and parks across the country are running into that housing issue, particularly for seasonal employees, and as a result, they're going without their full staffs. But that that does raise a question of what I touched on in the introduction to today's show is about the evolution of expectations on Friends organizations, on what you're being relied upon. It's more than just the margin of excellence. And is that right? I mean, you're involved there with housing. I mean, how long is it going to be before you're involved with wastewater treatment plants? And do your donors go along with that? Do they want their name attached with, the Rockefeller wastewater plant at Bar Harbor or Bass Harbor?
I have never seen. So there's two, I think, truths about Acadia. One is it is among the most porous national park in the national park, portfolio. When I say porous, when you drive into Yellowstone, you're either in Yellowstone or you're out of Yellowstone. You go through, and the same is true of Great Smokies. The same is true of Yosemite. Here, you're driving down the street and you're going through Otter Creek, and you go into the national park, and then you're in Seal Cove, and then you're in the national park, and then you're through Northeast Harbor, and you're back in the national park. And that creates both challenges, but overall, I think opportunities, because these villages are embedded within the national park. There is a strong sense of interdependence and interconnection, which leads to, I have never seen a place that is as philanthropically invested in a park as I have seen on Mount Desert Island. The community, the sense of pride and love, and people have very strong opinions, right? Because they care so deeply. So when we're talking to our donors about the need for housing, the response has just been overwhelmingly positive. So I think it's a fine line. In this case, I'd say that we're looking to make up for a market failure. And the market failure is that the free market is not providing affordable housing throughout the United States. Are we going to solve that problem for the United States? No. Are we going to solve that problem for Mount Desert Island? No. But every other entity on the island is under the same constraints. And every other entity, that's whether that's your large hotel owner, they're building workforce housing. Jackson Laboratory, building their own workforce housing. Mount Desert Island, their own workforce housing. So we're no different than those other entities. I'm excited and so appreciative that our donors understand, because it's kind of a leap. Say, well, if I care about the carriage roads, then what I need to do is give you money to develop workforce housing. That's a little bit of a leap, but they're
Yeah.
there.
It's interesting. Here in the 21st century, there are so many more challenges that the Park Service is confronted with. Physical challenges, as you were just talking about, affordable housing, housing period in many cases. And you're getting more people coming into the parks, and so there's more crowds, and so there's a need for more rangers, hopefully. There's a need to somehow figure out the traffic issue, the mass transit issue. And on top of all that, you throw in climate change. And I know, the staff there at Acadia not too many years ago had an incredible deluge in the summer when, I don't know if it was 9 inches of rain, but it was a lot of rain in a short amount of time. And oh my gosh, all of a sudden we've got to, rethink all the culverts in the park and the carriage roads and the damages there. And then, oh, by the way, did you know that the Gulf of Maine is warming faster than any other body in the oceans in the world? And what type of problems is that going to bring? So I guess on one hand, you've got all these new issues that you have to grapple with from where you're sitting. At the same time, does that give you more opportunities or more issues to raise with potential donors? You might find somebody who's really concerned about climate change. So yeah, here's $1 million to help with this, and I don't care about affordable housing. I mean, does it open up the possibilities in terms of raising money for these issues?
Yeah. So just to back out, look, I think that the national parks are facing enormous challenges, and what we need to do is propose enormous solutions. In part, that's what attracted me to Friends of Acadia, is they don't shy away from those enormous solutions, nor do our partners at Acadia National Park. And that's exciting space to be. I think also, to your point, philanthropy cannot replace appropriations. It has to be additive. But I do think it's a bit like stone soup, right? That you start out by putting your piece into the pot, and then it really inviting, to your point, we have to be creative in getting to solutions. That the old way, how you solve problems in the 80s is going to be different than how you're going to need to solve problems in the 2020s. And that's exciting space to be in, right? I don't know, I like learning, I like growing. I have the sense that Friends and national park partners throughout the country are both wrestling with this, but coming up with innovative solutions and sharing that with one another, right? What made the Romans great was they didn't innovate, they just adopted. So within the Friends Alliance, if something is working great in Cuyahoga, and I was just on the phone with them the other day, we don't have to come up with that as our own idea. We just need to adopt it. So that's one of the things I'm really appreciative, is this tight collegial network around the country. Yes, each site is different, but some of the challenges are shared challenges, and really kind of in that space. I think, to your point, when I give to an organization, if I'm allowed to direct those funds, you're going to get a greater investment from me. So absolutely, we go to the donors and try and meet them, where their interests lie, and have that portfolio. Like, hey, there are these 6 or 7 opportunities that, we really need you as a social investor. Now, what I can tell you is every conversation I've had with every donor, they want to know, is this replacing tax dollars or being used to enhance it?
Right.
And so this is where I'm going to encourage every listener, pick up the phone, call your congressional member, and tell them that national parks are important to you, and what are they doing to support the national park system. That'll start to grab their attention.
We can only hope. Well, Eric, it's been great chatting with you today. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but I know we could go on for another hour or two, because we're both passionate about the parks and finding solutions and discussing them. And one of these days we'll have to go down to Southwest Harbor and discuss it over a lobster lunch or something like that.
Absolutely. It'll be my pleasure, Kurt. And again, I want to thank you and your organization for what you're doing to really elevate and amplify these important issues throughout, and encourage your listeners to also support your organization. This happens through generous support from donors, and they should look at you and your organization as a very important organization to support.
All right. Well, I appreciate that, Eric. All right. Well, have a good rest of the day, and we'll catch up down the road and see how things are going.
Sounds good, Kurt. Take care.
That's our show for this week. We hope you enjoyed it. If you've been listening to our weekly podcasts, you know that there is an incredible array of stories and news to bring to you every Sunday. If there's a story in your favorite national park that you think we should include in our coverage, please drop us a note about it at news@nationalparkstraveler.org. For The Traveler, this is Kurt Repenchek. See you in the parks.
The composers and musicians at Orange Tree Productions have created a unique collection known as the National Park Series that has grown to include more than 30 CD titles. Composed against the backdrop of a park's sounds of nature, these musical scores will connect you with these beautiful places and take you there, at least in your mind. This collection is the #1 selling national park audio series in the world and provides the background music for National Parks Travelers podcasts. Visit them at orangetreeproductions.com. Editing and production work for the National Parks Traveler podcast is done by Splitbeard Productions. You can learn more about us at splitbeardproductions.com. National Parks Traveler is a 501c3 nonprofit media organization that provides daily editorial coverage of national parks and protected areas. Travelers coverage is made possible by reader and listener donations. Visit nationalparkstraveler.org.